Your phone should be off.
Oh, Adam Clark, his phone now.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening and welcome to the Progress with Unity podcast, live on YouTube once again. Adam, do you have a link for us to watch on YouTube?
Yep, I do.
Yep. So just while we're waiting for some people to watch us live in the world of the internet. Kevin, nice to have you back. How are we doing?
Nice to you guys. Well, to say that when I looked at the form table for Sheffield Wednesday post-COVID, it's quite depressing, really. So, but we're still in the championship at this stage. But let's not count our chickens on that.
No. Well, I'm sure there'll be some conversational topics around that a little later. Young Adam, you with the hold up this evening. Gone out for a cheeky Nando's. Other chicken shops are available. How are we doing?
Yeah, not so bad, Si. Thank you.
Good stuff. Nice and short and to the point. Mr. Thorpe, always cried saying that I'd come to you last. How are we doing?
I'm happy because you've got. Well, I'm not happy. I'm starting to cheer up a little bit.
Yep, fair enough. Oh, a little bit of a vibrate. Phones on silent, please, guys. Adam Pendlebury, how are we doing?
I'm okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm getting through it. I've turned to I'm having a Merlot tonight, so I'm enjoying it. I had a nice steak meal, so yeah, fantastic.
Belting. And Barry looks like he's frozen, so he's obviously doing something else. But Barry, how are we doing?
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, absolutely despondent about what's happened, but I'm sure we'll cover all that in a few moments.
Yeah, well, what we'll do is we'll just have I know we've 2 games to cover, but we'll just cover the one that's made the difference really. Off the back of a late draw down at Charlton. We played Fulham at home yesterday evening, Wednesday, the 22nd of July. In a game that was pretty much win or you get relegated for the Latics. Against a very strong Fulham side who at times had the chance to be automatically promoted to the Premier League. So it stood in good stead for them to be playing out the game. But the game finished Wigan Athletic 1, Fulham 1. And despite the best efforts of the players, the hopes of survival obviously now rest in the hands of an appeal. You cannot fault the players yesterday for their performance. They gave it their all. You'd like to think if things were maybe been a bit different for Fulham, the result may have gone our way. We had the chances to win the game, but it was just one game too far, Barry.
Well, I'm not sure if it was. I thought we deserved to have won the game. We all know the incidents. How on earth that was a free kick to Fulham and not a free kick to the Latics? And to think Joe Williams got boots as well. Fulham player had his foot in it slightly. If anything, it should have gone our way. Terrible decision. Absolutely terrible. The goal disallowed. It was borderline offside. You know, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. Kiefer Moore could have had a penalty. And we had, like Kuki said afterwards, we had the chances. It just won't fall for us. Just so frustrating. But how proud are we of what the players did last night, but in the past few weeks again as well. And every single one of them stepped up. Absolute legends and heroes. Every single one of them players. Fantastic.
I think that's the big thing to take away, that, you know, they are legends and heroes, and we're proud to have every single one of them pull on the blue and white of Wigan. Whether they'll still be here next season or not, each of them to a man, those who've been here for a long time, those who've been here for 6 months, they've done us all proud. Just while we're just getting into the intros, we are fielding questions from YouTube. So if you've got a question on YouTube, drop young Adam a comment. He'll read them out. And, you know, if you've got a question for returning guest Kev, who's back, or one of the podcast team, do let us know. We're also taking questions via YouTube as well. Adam, have you got something you would like to say?
No, just concur with what Barry said, really. I thought last night was one of our strongest performances of the season. It just didn't have the luck, really. Playing against a side who've got a realistic chance of being in the Premier League last year. And after the first 10 minutes, we dominated the game, really. You know, we played some really good football. And those players have been an absolute credit to the club over the last few weeks. They can hold their heads up high. For me, they'll always be legends as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's. I think everyone echoes those sentiments. Kev, I want to come into you first because, first and foremost, you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan, which is quite interesting in itself. Not just the fact that you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan, but what's going on at Sheffield Wednesday. So, what is going on at Sheffield Wednesday if people aren't fully aware, and what are potential problems that they could face?
Yeah, so thanks, Si. So yeah, thanks for having me on again. Good to join you all, and sorry about yesterday. Particularly, I'm a big Cookie fan. My dad's a Chesterfield season ticket holder, and they're kind of my second team. And I've watched them a lot under Paul Cook, and they were, he's a tremendous manager, and people like Sam Morsey, etc. Top players. So I hope we'll talk about it a bit later with the appeal, etc. But it was a bit of a roller coaster last night. From a Wednesday perspective, obviously we got done by Fulham at the weekend, so they are a good side, and sounds like you put in a good showing. I don't know why it wasn't on Sky. I was hoping it was going to be, but I don't know why West Brom was on instead. That seemed a bit mad to me, but the Brentford-Barnsley game was obviously unfortunate for you guys. Quite the game in the end. As for Wednesday off the pitch, on the pitch we've been dreadful really since lockdown. Since the return after lockdown, COVID. We've been sliding further down the table, and obviously since you guys beat us at the DW, was it February time? It's just been a kind of a never-ending slide down towards the bottom of the league, really. And we're now I think we finished 7 points above the drop, which is obviously a problem because we're still facing this FFP basically charge from the EFL in relation to the sale of Hillsborough, which I've got in the background behind me from the playoff semi-final against Brighton 4 years ago now. Time flies. So what's essentially happened is our chairman, to try and balance the books when we pretty much overspent during those 2 years when we got to the playoff final and the semi-final the year after, used it's probably not fair to call it a loophole because it's actually in the regulations, but whereby you essentially sell your stadium to yourself for what is supposed to be a fair value, given it's not a market sort of an arm's length transaction. And the allegation is that we did that outside of what was allowed, so both in terms of what the value we gave to the stadium and to the land, and also the timing of it. So apparently when it was registered at the land registry, it flagged up to the EFL that we didn't do it as we should have done. But unfortunately for the EFL and for us in a way, the whole case at the moment seems to turn on whether or not the previous regime of the EFL, when Sean Harvey was there, whether or not they sort of pre-authorised it, really, in that sense, and therefore we relied on representations that were made by the EFL. This has been going, I think it's 8 months now, and there were charges brought against the directors as well, but subsequently dropped. My understanding is that the hearing took place in front of the first instance disciplinary tribunal, and then it's all been rumour since then. Nobody knows for sure what the outcome is. There's various rumours going around online, but obviously Derby County are in the same situation, but they're unlikely to get the sort of points deduction that would get them into the relegation zone, whereas we are squarely within that situation now.
What's the rumoured points deduction for yourselves in Derby?
Anything from probably a minimum of 9 up to 21. for an aggravated breach, but probably more likely somewhere between 9 and 15, I would say.
Okay, so 9 points if you were to lose them. Obviously, that would put you in the same position as that we're in, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously 15 would make things obviously a lot worse. So obviously you'll be watching what goes on with that. Is there a decision due anytime soon? 8 months is a long time for this to be going on, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any closer from an outsider looking in. Yeah,
unfortunately, the process isn't hugely transparent. But as I've said many times to people, this is a system that the clubs have decided themselves ultimately. So it's all well and good. Sheffield Wednesday themselves and other clubs affected. I mean, I think Barnsley in particular have been quite vocal up until last night, of course, about the fact that it's taken so long, but that it is an independent process. I have sat on recently EFL disciplinary panels. So I did the Stevenage one recently about when they were about fielding an ineligible player, and it can be done quite swiftly if it depending on the complexity of it. But ultimately, it's not down to the EFL how long it takes. It's down to the disciplinary panel. They run the process. They decide the timetable, and clubs can find various ways to try and delay the process. But I don't think it's in either party's interest to delay. I mean, the fact that the EFL has the Sheffield Wednesday derby and the Wigan appeal pending is a nightmare for them.
Yeah.
Especially given the tight turnaround in the seasons.
Well, that's it. And that's one thing I want to ask you, because obviously Wigan's appeal, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it's due to be heard on the 31st of July. Do you think Wigan fans will get an answer on the 31st of July, or will that rumble on for a bit of time as well?
Well, it seems as though the reason we don't have the judgment in the Sheffield Wednesday case is because it was always likely that whatever happened, the other party were going to appeal it, because it's a bit of a sort of a flagging the ground situation for EFL. If they lose this, then it really puts the sort of FFP system in the Championship under great sort of scrutiny. But as far as I'm aware, there is no, apart from the appeal, which is what you're making, there's nothing further from that. So really, it should happen fairly quickly after that, because obviously it's an automatic deduction, and then it goes automatically to an arbitration panel, which is the normal appeals panel. So it should really be done quite quickly in that sense.
That's great. Barry, I'm going to come to you. So could you just provide listeners, if they're not fully up to speed, of probably a timeline of events from this week, really, and what's been going on? And I'll put you on the spot there, but you weren't paying attention in class then, so I'm going to come to you. If you could just get people up to speed on what has been going on this week and what we've got coming in the next week or so.
Yeah, well, this week we've had a press conference, haven't we, from the administrators. They've said that they've selected a preferred bidder. The strong rumours are that there's been a meeting today. It was high noon. The preferred bidder had to sign the letter today of acceptance and provide £100,000 into an account to show that they're serious. The strong rumour is that this has been done. So they haven't been named yet. I mean, there's not a lot of names. There's 2 or 3 names bandying about who it could be. I mean, we could say them, couldn't we? Which we will do. Is it the Dell Corporation? Not the computer people, but the some American consortium. Marwan Kukash is another name that was bandied about. Dave Athornthwaite from filed AFC Filed was bandied about as well, but that's been confirmed not to be true by the guy himself. So toss a coin and pick between the Americans and the Rainford guy. So possibly one of them. So we're just waiting for confirmation to find out who it is. That's about it, really. So we're just as much in the dark as we were last week. apart from the fact that they picked preferred bidder. And we sold Jensen Weir, confirmed.
Today, that wasn't it?
We've accepted a bid for Kiefer Moore at 2 million. So that should take care of the bills at the end of the month.
Okay, thanks, Barry. So that's getting us back into the frame of what's going on. I will say, if you are watching on YouTube, drop us a question in. You can drop us a questions on Twitter as well. If you're following the Progress for Unity podcast or one of these guys, then do ask a question. I'm going to come to older Adam now. Adam, what's your views on what's going on and how things are going to play out now from now on in?
Well, I mean, obviously the appeal is everything to us now. In my view, our championship future hangs on the appeal. Sheffield Wednesday may well get a points deduction. I'd be absolutely amazed if Derby get a 17-point deduction. So a Sheffield Wednesday deduction would just simply mean that a different side will join ourselves and Hull in League One next season. So I think really all our eggs now are in our appeal basket. In my view, that inherent uncertainty is obviously difficult at the moment because, again, we're not going to know what that budget is. Obviously, there's bills that need paying, so players are going to be sold, to pay those bills. Even in the next week, before the appeal, you can see that sort of materialising. Just why you've got me on as well. We had which is probably more for Kevin, really. We had a question from the very obviously well-known Nick Taylor, who had a question for Kevin. Is it as black and white as the sort of 12-point deduction or no 12-point deduction in an appeal like this, or could it be broken down? 6 this season, 6 next season, or could there be a reduction in the points deduction? Is there any discretion, or is it all or nothing? On your understanding of the process, Kevin?
Yeah, no, my understanding of it is, and it's also true of most sort of appeal processes under the EFL, that it's a full sort of rehearing in terms of the sanction side, and of course you're having all the evidence heard, and they have to do an independent financial review as such within this 21-day period. So regulation 12.3.18 says they can confirm the deduction, set it aside and substitute a lower number of points, or order that there's no sanction. So it doesn't say it could be split over seasons, and I think that's unlikely. It would apply to this season, but yeah, they have the full range when it comes to either 0 to 12 points, essentially.
Are you aware of any precedent on that, Kev, in terms of sort of reducing points deductions, or does it tend to be sort of appeal in its entirety, where it's a kind of all or nothing?
As far as I'm aware, I don't think there has ever been an appeal against this sort of sanction on the basis of the force majeure issue. So because of course all the previous loopholes in the rules that people like Leicester City took advantage of, and that's why we have this regime in the first place, have all been fairly cut and dried. You're in administration and that's it. Whereas this is unique, and this is where the regulations are interesting, because can you separate a club from its owner in terms of the behaviour, or is the mind of the owner instantly attributed to the club? And I'm sure the QC, who you met, David Phillips, is that right? QC?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, David Phillips. I'm sure that'll be the kind of argument he'll be making under company law, principally.
So, in your just my final question, Kev, on that. So, in your view, then, there's no way that Wigan can run obviously a COVID argument, because if you treat the owners as the ones who made that decision to put us into administration, because clearly when they took over the club, there was already a COVID in place. So in other words, we have to say that it was unforeseeable for the club that an owner would come in and do what he did, basically put us into administration within a month for whatever reason that might be.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't think the word of the regulations squarely fits that. So it's going to take a creative interpretation of what the regulation actually says. But that's not to say it's without merit. I mean, because it's unprecedented. We've had, football clubs, many football clubs have had what you might say is fraudulent owners who had no money. But it doesn't necessarily seem as though, well, we don't know, do we? We don't, unless you guys know more than I do. There's nothing public at the moment that anybody's been able to truly get to the bottom of what seems to have happened. There's lots of rumour out there, but nothing concrete. So.
That's my question in interrogation of Kevin Dunn for now. So back to you, Ty.
Is it cross-examining in the legal world? You've done your cross-examination.
I have got a lamp on here, which is very much like a police cross-examination lamp. So it just feel that way.
I must admit, we're very fortunate to have you, Kev, here. I just want to ask, have you heard of or had any dealings with the QC that we have appointed for the appeal? I believe he's very well known in the field.
Yeah, I believe that, and this is my memory to play, but I think I was telling Adam yesterday that I think he was a chair of an anti-doping panel where I represent an athlete for it, and he came across as, obviously you don't get to QC without being extremely bright, but he was very fair, very thorough, he was very impressive. You don't say that about every QC you meet, to be honest. Some are not particularly personable, or some have hung on to it a long time, but he seemed extremely sharp, and I know he does lots of different sports case and also works in different jurisdictions, so he's one of the best, definitely. Yeah.
I'm just going to pass back to older Adam. I'm just going to say good evening, Nathan Sinclair, watching out on YouTube. He was due to join us tonight, but he said he'd end up raging. So he's having a night off, and he will be back with us in the near future.
Yeah, thanks, Si. And don't worry, I'll disappear after this, so I don't keep asking questions. It's just something that came to mind when he was talking about sort of the composition of a panel. So just because a lot of people won't know this, Kev, could you talk about how it kind of works in terms of sort of the appeal panel, who it's likely to be composed of? Are they all lawyers, or is there a mixture of lawyers and sports experts?
So it's what's called, they call it a league arbitration panel. So that you nominate, the club will nominate someone to sit as one of the three arbitrators. The EFL will pick someone, and then it's normally Sport Resolutions, who are the kind of secretary, they're the administrators for the panel on behalf of the EFL to make sure it's independent. And then they will choose a chair who will be I would imagine for a case such as this, given how important it is, it'll be a very, very senior QC, I would have thought. And then there will be a hearing. I think all the hearings are still being done by video conference at the moment. So it'll be a Zoom call like this one, strangely enough. And when I sat on the Stevenage panel recently, they can be very long days, sat on these 7-8 hour days, hearing evidence. It would seem to me that, in the regulations, which is unique to these insolvency type cases, it says that the EFL will have instructed a firm of independent accountants to look at the situation, to do a forensic review. That might be quite difficult to do within 21 days before the hearing is supposed to be finished by. And obviously, of course, Wigan will put forward their own report of what's happened and the individuals and who's been directing the issue. And then there's the issue of who are you going to get to give evidence? I mean, it seems as though from what the administrators have said that the old owners and the new owners have not really been very, very open about having any sort of engagement with them, which is going to be problematic for any sort of hearing. And obviously they don't. I mean, in terms of, am I right in thinking that there are a lot of loans involved in this deal that are due for repayment at some point? So you would think they have some incentive to actually give evidence, but whether they will or not, they're based in Hong Kong. The EFL can't force them, and neither can Wigan. They can apply under the law to ask them to give evidence, but again, you're trying to enforce that in Hong Kong or wherever they're based. It's that's going to be pretty difficult.
Just got a question coming just from Pete Reese on YouTube just before we move on. I think you might have missed it, but just to recap what you said, Kev. Just whether you can clarify our situation regarding a potential transfer embargo, which was mentioned by Gerald Krasner yesterday.
Of course, yeah. I must admit, when I was told about that, I kind of thought, well, that would be an odd thing for the EFL to do, because ultimately, I mean, the last thing they want is for Wigan to go out of business, and they need to be able to trade themselves out of trouble, financial trouble, presumably, until a new buyer is found. So it would make no sense for them to put them under a transfer embargo. The only part of the regulations to me that could have any relevance is about the non-payment of players. And I know that some of the players took a deferral from, is it June's wages paid in arrears. So it could be pinned on that, but I have to think that's probably not quite correct from the administrator. It wouldn't make sense for the league as an organisation or for the going concern of the club to do that. Yeah.
Okay, Paul, we're going to come to you. You've been sat patiently in your office.
Yeah, I still think there's a lot of questions to be answered around the nature of going into administration. And the administrators themselves raised a lot of things around that in terms of what we owe and who we owe. They walked in the door and said, "It's not right. Why are we even here?" So for me, there's something afoot. And I know given that we've got lawyers on, you don't, for legal reasons, suggest that there are untoward goings on. But if I were a betting man, I would bet my house on the fact that something untoward comes out. It's all just far too strange and not, we're going through the process in this country at the moment. The directors in this country had no idea. The bloke takes over and puts you straight into administration, and we don't have a reason as to why that makes sense. And that for me, just what's going on? Something's not right somewhere, is it? I mean, as for the EFL, I could sit and rant here all day. I mean, I posted everything this morning. So it's like a parent who's responsible for looking after their children, allowing a babysitter to have custody of the child for a while. The babysitter does something to the child, so the parent blames the child. The EFL approved our buyer, who then screws the club over, so the EFL punished the club. I mean, it's just not right. I could sit here all night and complain and moan.
Well, before you do that, we're going to bring in Mr. Worthington. Barry, anything you'd like to add in?
I'd like to ask Kev, where did they get this cost from of £500,000 for the appeal?
That does seem quite a lot, even for a high-ranking QC who'll be working, and his team will be working night and day probably to get this ready. I do think where that might have come from is the last regulation in this section about the administration says any costs incurred by any party in proceedings brought by an appeal like this shall be met by the club. It doesn't say it's shared. It doesn't say it depends on what the outcome is. And it says that that amount is then considered as a sum due to the league. So Wigan will incur all the costs of the entire process. So the costs of the panel, the costs of the EFL, and their own costs, regardless of whether they're successful or not. That's the way it reads to me. And it's highly unusual. So that's where you might get to the £500,000 figure potentially. Both sides are instructing QCs and junior barristers, plus solicitors, plus forensic accountants. You can easily get up to, £500,000 quite easily if that's the case.
Yeah, and just going back to something you said before, like when you mentioned Leicester originally, the penalty point came in to stop unscrupulous owners from putting clubs into administration, wiping the debt off, starting a new company, but remaining the same owners. Surely that particular section of this penalty clause has been written wrong. There's no protection there for the clubs that suffer a consequence like we have. Where, as you go back to Leicester City, didn't they have the same owners for about 4 years and put them into administration multiple times, and even got promoted one season, didn't they, in administration? And I remember, all the leagues were kicking off about it. So that's why they brought this in, to stop. So there was no advantage to doing it apart from the financial one. So obviously, we've not gone into administration for any sort of advantage, or in the seasonal advantage. It's not going to get us into the playoffs, or it's strengthening our arm to put to have a go next season. It was simply the owner had decided to pull the plug and walk away, or do some sort of sting or a con or whatever it is that they're up to, which is going to come out, no doubt. Is that what I'm saying to you? Is that rule? Do you think that rule itself needs to be looked at to stop, to protect the clubs a little bit more? Not protect the owners, but to protect the clubs, to protect the fans.
Yeah, I agree, Baron. I think one of the arguments they will make, and one of the things you always do, is you say, what was the intention of this regulation when it was drafted and when it came in? Why is it there? And they'll try and get the panel who are there to kind of step away from the words on the paper. That's what you're trying to do. And in Wigan's favour, the force majeure description is quite broadly drafted in that sense, but actually it doesn't separate the owner from the club, because if you think about it, the EFL regulations are there to protect each club against every other club in the league and in the EFL. So it's quite a contentious issue if they were to then allow a rogue owner, a club to sort of separate itself from a rogue owner. I'm sympathetic to it as a fan, but as a lawyer, that's going to be a difficult discussion. In terms of rewriting it, I think what's the case normally, as Leicester showed, is that until some clever lawyer / accountant says, "Oh, it doesn't appear to cover this particular situation, let's use it," or the EFL go to the regulations and look and go, "Oh, we don't seem to have thought about this in advance." That's only when things get changed, is only afterwards, but that won't help you in this situation, sadly.
No. And before I go, just an opinion of mine, that one of the consequences, obviously, of us winning an appeal would be that it could have a knock-on effect to Barnsley. We've seen this season League One run with an odd number of clubs. Do you think it could be plausible for that to happen again, and instead of a 24 club championship, we could go with a 25 club championship and have 4 relegation spots next season?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not one I've thought of, but there is precedent for that. And I think, Barnsley would try their best to go to the ordinary courts, not the sort of sporting tribunals, to try and get that done. And that is happening. I mean, Scottish football's having this situation, French football's having this situation. So it's not without some sort of merit. So that could be one of the arguments, that it wouldn't be your first argument if you were David Phillips and his team, but you would say, well, in any event, this should be, because of the short time frame and everything, we don't want to, it to be Barnsley done unfairly. Mm-hmm. Then, what about a 25-team championship? And that's quite a neat solution, really. I mean,
thank you.
yeah, it's not. I mean, the trouble is that the EFL and the FA have already got all on trying to get the leagues back evened up and figure out. Obviously, it was difficult. It was going to be relatively simple before COVID came along, but I think there's been all this discussion about regionalising leagues, and because of the financial impact of what's going on. It's not to say that League One will start, in September or August, because the latest thing is that the clubs are pushing back on having to pay for COVID tests, which they can't afford if there's no fans. So you might not see Leagues 1 and 2 starting until later in the year, potentially. It could get very messy on that side.
Thanks, Kev.
Thanks,
Kev. I'm just going to jump in now and just mention the Supporters Club, who have got a petition off the ground into the review the need for a statutory owners and directors test in football. It reached 10,000 signatures within 24 hours yesterday, and is now up to 100,000. That's what we're aiming for now. We're at 12,170 at the time of recording. If we get to 100,000 signatures, this petition will be considered for debate in Parliament. So I could ask if everyone could just share the tweet or the link with their friends and friends and friends to get that petition signed, because we don't want another club like ourselves, Bolton, Bury, potentially having to go through similar situations. Kev, you're going to be very, very busy tonight. Oh, Barry wants to come back in. Go on, Barry.
Yeah, just on that, Simon. I mean, one thing that I did for anybody who's feeling up to doing this, I had a look on the petition, and it's broken down into political constituencies throughout the United Kingdom. And I looked at the constituencies that haven't voted, because it tells you who's, how many people from a particular constituency has voted in the petition or signed the petition. And I had a look at the areas where people hadn't. And I tagged clubs in from there, like Kirkcaldy in Scotland. I tagged Raith Rovers in. I did the same for Queen of the South in Dumfries, Berwick Rangers. I have friends who live in Argyll, so I did that. Lo and behold, I checked later on that evening, and we got signatories from those areas. And so obviously, if you're tagging friends or other clubs into that petition, it could just work and get us a few extra ones to get us over the line.
Good stuff. Kev, I feel, I'm glad we're not paying you £500,000 every time you come on, because we would well and truly be bankrupt. All the questions seem to be coming your way tonight. Okay. So thank you once again for coming on. David Warrington has asked, what does the fit and proper person test consist of?
Yeah, so this is something I wrote about because after the last live pod, I did pen this piece over the weekend about my kind of views on the current state of ownership regulation. And I'm all in favour of the petition, and I will sign it myself, of course. But the government, and particularly the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, the committee, the sort of House of Commons committee, have had several reports into football governance and said they want to see a more robust owners and directors test. What the owners and directors test isn't, is it doesn't look at the particularly the broader character of an individual. So it only looks at very narrow, what we call objective criteria. So there's no kind of moral judgment about an owner. It's just, do you fit these very narrow criteria? And they're all related towards criminal convictions, insolvency of football clubs. So it doesn't talk about insolvency of businesses generally. You don't even have to turn up in person and show yourself to the EFL. You just have to submit documents. And again, this is because the clubs who ultimately vote on the rules and regulations don't want to test like that. Because if you think about, and I think this is particularly relevant for the Championship more than anything else, if you think about most of the owners in the Championship now, a lot of them are wealthy individuals, either based here or abroad, and they would not want to invest in the Football League clubs if they thought that their back history was going to be forensically looked into. So that would deter them from taking over. Then you've got to say to fans, well, we're going to block out a load of wealthy people who want to take over your football club and maybe get you to the Premier League. Now, until you've been in a situation like Wigan are now, and to a far lesser extent, Sheffield Wednesday face this charge now, which could relegate them, you don't think about that kind of thing. You don't think about the greater good of football. But certainly, and the owners and directors test applies not just in the Football League, but also in the Premier League, of course. And anybody who's been following the Newcastle Saudi Arabia saga, that adds more weight to the fact that it needs, there is a desire from the broader stakeholders, particularly fans, but other stakeholders as well in football, to have a much broader test under the owners and directors. The only thing I'd like to say at this point is it focuses only on individual people. So it doesn't look at the companies, it doesn't look at the structure, it's literally that individual person. So that's where the real big difference comes between the owners and directors tests and then things like financial fair play and other financial requirements under the regulations, which are looking at the club itself. But owners and directors is just about that particular person itself. I hope that answers the question.
I've done the muted thing. Yeah, no, I'm sure Dave will be appreciated. Do you want to plug what you've written? Have you written the piece? Is it online for people to read at all?
It is, yeah. It's on the website for my consultancy business, and it's free to read. There's no paywall or anything, so I'll send that out afterwards, and people can take a look. It essentially, the reason behind it was when I was preparing for the last pod, it was really sort of consolidating all the things I'd read into one place and to get people up to speed with what the government have been saying and what sort of, there was a big report into Bury as well, which, again, people aren't very interested in sort of big reports, but that's my day job.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's my bedtime reading, but hopefully I've sort of distilled it into a readable format. And I've also put some of my own thoughts at the end, which people can feel free to agree or disagree and, let me know their thoughts.
Open up a bit of debate, which is good. Unfortunately, Kev, or fortunately, the questions keep coming for you, so you might need a bit more of that water. But like I say, I think it's a unique opportunity to have someone like yourself to talk to. And obviously, Adam wants to get back in on the act in a minute, so we'll come back to him in a moment. But Neil Sherratt on Twitter has asked, not sure if the question has shown up in chat, but do the EFL have to confirm to the club any penalty in writing before the conclusion of the playoff final, i.e. the end of the season? If they did not do this, could we apply for any deduction to come off next season so we remain a championship club?
I haven't read anything in the regulations or know of anything that says it has to be the case. I'm happy to be told that there is something in there that says that, but no, I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
There's some good questions coming in, and I think things that a lot of people are thinking different things, and it's nice to be able to get these questions either answered or open up a further debate. We're going to go over to young Adam. He's been sat there working behind the scenes for us for quite a while. I know we've had quite a few questions on YouTube, Adam. I think one's just literally come in as well. Have you seen anything there that we may want to ask the panel or ask Kev?
Well, there was one from Kenny. I think it was touching on the fact that, the 12-point deduction being to stop clubs having an advantage. Obviously, where's the advantage in this situation? I think we covered that quite well. Ian Hammond has pointed out the fact that we're going ahead with these legal proceedings and the costs that come with that. We must be confident of the case being successful. There was a question for Kev, unsurprisingly. He said, Young's lawyers tried to liquidate the club, but the administrators persuaded them not to. Not sure how, but could this form part of the club's defence?
Well, it could form part of the defence, but I don't think that would be a particularly strong argument. I don't think it would be particularly in the interest of the owners to liquidate compared to trying to get some money back, especially if they're owed money as well, or the new owners or whoever the owners happen to be when it all comes out in the wash. It's normally... You normally have to go through a procedure whereby you go into administration before liquidation, because the company has to be, it'll be shown it's not a going concern purely on the basis, and it's very unusual again that there's no real creditors, or there wasn't at the point it was put into administration. It was just the fact that the new owner said, I'm not putting any more money in, so it's not going to be able to meet its liabilities by the end of the month. So no, I wouldn't think so. Liquidation is always a sort of a last case scenario.
I think that could still be speculation in terms of that's exactly what happened. I think there's rumours that they did try and liquidate the club, but again, as you say, I don't think that's actually confirmed.
Okay.
Rob Walker's asked, how much money do we need to generate from player sales? As most are paid with only proportion up front, could this mean us selling everyone? I think, Barry, you'd heard it was around the 2 million mark. I don't know if the administrators have come out publicly and said anything about that.
Yeah, they had. Well, no, it wasn't said publicly. I was stood on the street, if that's public.
It's public enough, isn't it?
Public place.
And it was one of the administrators who said it to me. They got to find 2 million by the end of the month. Without, breaking any confidences, today on Paul Kendrick's Twitter account, he's said that we've accepted a bid for Kiefer Moore for 2 million. So that'd cover it, wouldn't it?
I think the Jensen Weir stuff is to pay for the appeal.
Yeah, who's the Alfie Divine stuff for?
Well, there you go.
It's Kev's fees, this Alfie Divine.
That's all there is at the minute, Simon, I think.
No worries. Well, we'll come back to you. Keep up the good work in the background.
Try my best.
Before I go to Older Adam, I want a bit of feedback from you guys watching on YouTube and on whether you can leave us a comment on YouTube or leave us a comment on Twitter. Do you like the format of these podcasts where it's a bit more interactive? Because obviously we're used to sitting, be in a studio recording. What do people think of this, Barry? I've just put this out there now, but what are your thoughts on this? Do you like this new way of working that we're trying?
I like the fact that it's interactive with people who are listening, but I'd sooner be face to face because I'm missing the company.
Well, I think
the social interaction and So maybe once we get back in the studio, we could still record like this, and we could sit around holding hands, but to the wider world, we'd look like we were, in separate locations.
Well, I said we could have a camera in there, couldn't we, and record live because we've got the facilities to do that. But it's a good way of getting like Kevin. He's not going to travel over from Sheffield every week. As things stand as well, we might not hear from Kev next season. We've been very, very fortunate this year to have you on, Kev. I know a certain friend of yours wants to jump back in. He's done very well to not unmute his mic and jump in. So let's go back to Mr. Pendlebury, if you'd like to come in with your question for Kev.
Yeah, first thing is I do like this format site. I think it's good to be interactive, but there's nothing better than being sat in a studio with Barry sharing a nice whiskey. So
I suppose the only problem is when we do get back in the studio, if we do something live like this, we can't have the rustling of sweets and phones interrupting in the recordings. But it's something to look at, definitely. Tech man sorted.
Well, we know that's a good. just bring Barry back in just to tell us what whiskey he's drinking at the moment.
This is a Penderyn single malt Welsh whiskey, Madeira finish. Beautiful, very subtle, and it comes in at about 45%. It's very nice, though. You wouldn't think so.
It was a good recommendation, and Barry spotted it, and we got it cheap on Amazon, didn't we? So thanks for that, Barry.
No problem.
Anyway, let's get back to the serious business. This is a more general question. It's because I know about where Kev's expertise lies. So obviously, we've seen the Rick Parry interview about the bet and rumours of all kinds of stuff going on in the Philippines, etc., etc. I just want Kevin's view on these type of things, betting and integrity, and particularly looking at the Far East. Obviously, this would be probably the biggest scandal in football history. But would it be a massive surprise to Kevin if there was something like this? And obviously, we're not saying there is anything like this, but it is the potential that something like this could happen.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that in terms of the betting and gambling side, you know, it is for a lot of people, that's where the serious gamblers are, is in the Far East, in particular when it comes to football. Anyway, and as you say, I do work. That's kind of my very narrow specialism, is the betting integrity and match fixing type stuff. So nothing would surprise me, and I know that the former owners were involved in the casino or entertainment business at least. So I think that's probably where these kind of rumours get more fuel to the fire. I did run it past some colleagues and mentioned it, and even they said that seems so incredibly far-fetched as to have much merit to it. But unfortunately, in the world of sort of integrity and etc., nothing shocks me anymore in the sports world. You know, we've seen, and this is nothing to do with Wigan, strictly speaking, but, you know, the way in which people who are trying to corrupt sport have been able to adapt their modus operandi during COVID has been incredible. You know, the guys I work with have never been busier than they have been during this period. So there's always somebody looking to make a quick buck out of sport, which is obviously, and this comes back to the governance side, that, you know, it's a structurally weak industry in terms of governance. Ultimately, that's sport. It always has been. It's behind the curve compared to most other industries. So, yeah, there's plenty of people in there who are looking to make some money in not the nicest way. I don't know whether Adam knows he's on mute.
I think he's done. Is he done after one question? Is that might be a miracle?
It's a world record, that.
You know what, Kev? While he's
hold on, Kev.
Oh, he's back. Here we are.
I've finished. No further questions.
All right, Kev. We're going to give you a minute just to have a drink and give your voice box a rest.
Yeah, I might recharge my glass.
David Warrington said, "Great work, guys, and thanks again, Kev, for your response." His question was around the fit and proper persons test. Right. Guys watching live, we're going to do our Player of the Year poll. All I want you to do is send in, type in the comments on YouTube or message us on Twitter. Just let us know who your Wigan Athletic Player of the Year is. Now, I know we could go for every single one of the players, but we're just after the one player that stood out for you this season. Question for the podcast team. What do you want to see from our new owners? Would we be happy to see something like Ian Lenigan's consortium take over the club and for us to remain stable, even if that were in League One? Great listen, guys. Thorpe, we'll come to you first.
I think the answer has to be yes. I mean, we've been threatened with the very existence of the club. And I think all any football fan wants to do is watch their team and feel that their team has a chance of competing. And I think having watched us get into this division, go out of this division 3 times, 3 times. But relegated twice, rebuild twice, and now actually be feeling like rather than taking 1 step forward, 2 steps back, we're actually in a position where we can move forward. To have that pulled from under you is gutting. So yeah, I think just to put some stability back, it will be enough at the moment.
That's a great answer. Barry, I'm going to come to you with this one. It's a second question from Forever WAFC on Twitter, saying, is it time we ended the bitterness with the rugby club and attempted, not quite sure how other than through free tickets for kids, etc., to get those kids who support Liverpool, Man United, etc., to support Latics? Nothing beats live football.
Nothing beats live football, indeed. Whatever my answer to the rugby question is, it's going to upset 50% of the people, isn't it?
That's why I've come to you.
Yeah, speaking personally, it is time. I was around in the 80s and Maurice Lindsay and you know, all that condescending stuff he said. And I've had my nose rubbed in it quite a few times working in the fire service, where 95% of the firefighters at that time were rugby supporters. It was hard being a Latics fan. But yeah, it is time. It is time. That was 30 years ago. Let's move on, and let's move on together. How do we get the kids back? I think that's been a question that the club's been trying to answer for a number of years.
Yeah.
It started in the Premier League. We saw the kids getting involved a lot more. We just keep banging the club, keeping the club in the public sight, and they doing what they do. I don't think they can do any more, really. The community side of things, they work tremendously hard. And it's just up to dads, granddads, mums and grandmas to take the kids along to the Latics with them when they go.
Adam?
Yeah, just on the first question that you asked about the ownership. I mean, if we're back in League One, then what will be will be. But what I would like is, the biggest thing for me is that somehow, and I know this might be difficult, is that we actually keep that youth academy. You know, we can somehow keep that going, because I don't know what the cost of it is a year, but for me that is a fantastic investment, because we've already seen the fruits of that. You know, it's paid a massive bill, hasn't it, with Weir, and you know it's given us a lot of. It's given us 2 teams a week at a certain point of the season to go and cheer on. You know, you know, all of us on the podcast, we've been there watching the youth team, and we really enjoyed it. You know, so that for me would be the thing. Is there a way of keeping our model going, of actually producing really good youth players and being able to sell them on, or signing players who haven't quite made it at the top level, but we can improve them, the likes of Williams and Robinson. You know, everything that Jackson and Darren Royal was saying about our model was, for me, was coming good. You know, we were doing exactly what we said we were going to do, and it's so sad, or it would be so sad if that actually came to an end. So my hope for the new owners, I'm not bothered about spending big and etc. Is, can we keep that academy going? Can we keep it at the standard it is at the moment? And if we can, then we've got a great future.
Yeah, spot on. Right, Kev, might be glad that you're back now. It may be a question that we can open up to the rest of the panel. But it's on Chris Sudworth. Really enjoying the format. Can I ask, do we know what the situation is with players' relegation release clauses? Are they activated now or suspended pending appeal?
Funnily enough, I just looked on Twitter and saw that question. So I was frantically trying to look on the EFL website what the table says, because to me it's what the official league table says. So as soon as that 12-point penalty is applied, which according to the regulations, it should have been applied as soon as the final whistle blew last night. But when I've looked at various league tables, I haven't seen that it is yet. So I suppose it all depends what it says on the EFL website in terms of the league table.
Right. So it's an interesting point, that one, then, isn't it? Because it's unknown at the moment. I don't know if anyone has actually managed to find the EFL websites.
I've just looked at it now. So Wigan are 23rd according to the EFL's table with a little asterisk next to the 47. Now, this always comes down to the fact of what is the player saying and what are their agents saying is best for them. And they'll be taking some sort of guidance from what the club say about the legal prospects of the appeal. But strictly contractually, I would say that if on the official league table you are in the relegation zone, then if I was the agent, I'd be arguing that I could leave and go somewhere else. And you say activate the release clause. But it certainly wouldn't be cut and dry in the contract. I can't imagine anybody would have that kind of foresight to put that in there.
Well, no. Right then, Mr. Thorpe, I believe you've got a question to come in with.
Yeah, as per everybody else, it's just a question for Kev. With us going into administration basically as a result of the owner pulling funding, as opposed to anything else, is there any weight in the appeal basically trying to throw some of the onus on the EFL for approving that owner just weeks before? Because if we've gone into administration because the owners pulled funding, that could happen to any number of clubs in any division. And it's unforeseen by the people in the club. But the closeness of that approval of that owner, does that carry any weight, do you think?
This is a good question. Well, I'm glad you brought this up because this is the distinction that I was making earlier between the difference of regulating individual people and regulating the owners, whether it's an individual or a company or however it might be. Because there's two different tests you have to satisfy ultimately. One is that each individual with the relevant shareholding or influence has to pass the owners and directors test. The second test is one about proving the solvency of the club. And you have to prove it not just for this season, but for next season. Now, it seems to me, and I have no particular proof of this or hard evidence, but it seems from what people say is that the EFL simply asks for a proof of funds. And if you're from abroad, it comes in some sort of bank guarantee or a solicitor's letter, which says that the owner has X amount in the bank. What it doesn't say is it doesn't force you to say that you will spend that money on the football club. And that does seem to be quite a significant shortfall in the regulations to me. So I think it would be difficult to, because what the EFL would probably say is, well, we've run exactly the same procedure as we've done for every other club. And we were fooled as much as you were. I think that's what they would probably say. And again, what you have to remember is the EFL are kind of going to bat for the rest of the clubs in the league. In a way, they have to represent what the other clubs are thinking, particularly in the Championship, but across the broader football league. So they can't just simply say, "Oh, sorry, we feel really sorry for you. We'll happily wave this through." They have to fight their corner to uphold the regulations as written, regardless of what they might think privately. So that's the key distinction between the individual person and the solvency point. But clearly, whoever told the EFL that they were solvent, either they're not solvent or they're just not willing to put the money in after the event.
But that event is so close, isn't it, to the purchase?
Well, I think we were all sort of tiptoeing around it earlier about what's happened. But what I think you can say is that people who are far more versed in finance than I am or none of them have been able to say yet that they can find a reasonable explanation for what's happened.
Yeah,
Looking at every possible business case, they can't see it. So,
yeah, it's like where I butchered the Brian Hanrahan quote before, where you say, I can't, for legal reasons, say that there has been anything untoward going on, but I would bet my house that there has, type of thing, if I were a betting man.
I think that's what everybody. There is just no logical explanation. I think that's all you can say without casting any aspersions on anyone in particular. From a business perspective, and I know football is unfortunately not a normal business, but even from the crazy world of football and football finance and ownership, there is no reasonable explanation for what's happened.
No, I did notice that there was, and it's horribly remiss of me not to be able to credit whichever person it was on Twitter that was linking a number of corporations and previous activities of Mr. Choi and his friend who he sold the club to, with a few other bankruptcies and things. So yeah, it definitely does not look right.
Okie doke. Anyone else got anything you'd like to bring in? Barry, have you got anything you'd like to mention?
How's the votes going on the player of the season?
It looks like, for me, Sam Morsey is making his way through to be the winner.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like. There's a few shouts, obviously. Joe Williams, I think that's a worthy shout. There's a mention of Anthony Robinson, Cal Naismith. But yeah, it's very much swaying to Morsey. Just on you asked about the new format, Si. There is an interesting comment here saying, I like the new format, but it falls apart without me, which I thoroughly agree with.
Is that one of your friends?
I don't know. But yeah, people like the new format. A few people that say they prefer the recorded version, which is fair enough.
And it is available, isn't it?
That'll be out later anyway. So
yep. So yeah, I think we'll keep that format, whatever happens, in terms of releasing a recording. But yeah, Sam Morsey winning the vote on the YouTube side of it anyway.
Oh, belting. Has anyone got anything they'd like to bring in as we start to roll towards the end of this evening's podcast?
Just the fact that I think.
Sorry about
it. There's a lot of angry and sad Latics supporters out there. Angry of the situation we found ourselves in, but quite despondent as well. I think this being relegated this way hurts a lot more than us being absolutely crap and knowing that it's coming. You know, we went down under Malky Mackay, we went down under Warren Joyce, and we were awful and we knew it were coming. But we've been playing like a team on a mission. It's been fantastic football. We've scored goals, from Christmas I'm talking about. And it just feels like we've been kicked between the legs. It's really hard to take. Like Adam said earlier on, the club was on a great footing. It looked like for the next 5 to 10 years, with a load of players coming through from the academy, who were going to get into the first team and then go on to make us some revenue as well. And that owner in Hong Kong, I don't think he cares what he's done, but he's probably no idea. I mean, it's devastated the club and devastated the town. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Adam?
Well, obviously, absolutely concur with what Barry has said, that, this season for me, in terms of since January, I've enjoyed it more than probably most of the seasons I've been watching since '87. And, apart from maybe that spell in 2012, and obviously all the years in the third tier and the promotions, but there was something about this team. They always were the underdogs, even their own fans wrote a lot of them off. I mean, and one specific mention to Cal Naismith. who for me epitomises everything about this run. You know, he was written off by a lot of fans, and you know, he's turned it around. He's been brilliant at centre half. He's been brilliant on the right wing, the left wing, wherever he's had to play. Next season, if we don't sign a goalkeeper, I'm sure we could have Naismith in goal. He'd do a job for us. So, you know, all that for me has been absolutely superb. And the only other thing I would say is the fact that in the future, I think this has shown the last 2 or 3 weeks that when Latics fans are all together and there is no animosity between the fans, then that's when we're the strongest, really. So I think we'll try and keep that going, really, and try and keep strong. And obviously, clearly, thanks to Kevin, who I'm pretty sure now his second team is definitely Wigan Athletic.
Well, yeah, as we come to the closing remarks, I want to say thank you to Kevin for continually coming on to the podcast, putting up with Adam constantly, probably getting in touch and trying to get you on. It's been really appreciated. I don't want to say this is the last one for the season, because I think we'll be following up on any events that come in the coming weeks. No doubt we'll probably have Kev on again, take up some more of his evenings, but just to keep us in tow of what's actually accurate. Has anyone got anything else before I wrap up?
Yeah, just Barry's absolutely spot on about this relegation hurting, well, assuming that's what's coming, hurting more than previous ones, because of how well we're doing. I mean, last night I was dreaming I was up front trying to score goals, but couldn't get a shot off. It's that level of frustration. It's just mad. And I shouted at my daughter for nothing last night as well because I was annoyed. Yeah, it's hurting, this one, isn't it?
Yeah. Barry, do you have something?
I can't follow that really. You know, without being indecent.
Did you shout at the dog?
No, I'm just thinking about my dreams last night. That's all.
Just one comment, Si.
Okay.
Yeah, just obviously thank you, Si, for doing an excellent job as always as chairing. I know we take the mick out to you a lot, but you've done a good job of chairing. I mean, Barry was the king of the chairing, but you've equalled him anyway. I'm not going to say you've bettered him because Barry's a legend, but you've certainly equalled him over the last season with your chairing the podcast. This club has to survive, because if it doesn't survive, what we're going to do? We're going to have to do a Progress with Unity podcast about snail racing or something. So
we will survive, and that leads me now into my
Gloria
my
Gaynor.
My final part that Adam Arkwright wrote, that we are match days, we are up days, we are down days, we are every day. We are Northern Soul, we are heart and soul. We are pies and pints, we are blue and white. We are dads, lads, mums, daughters. We are Dave Whelan, Harry Lyon and Ian Gilliband. We are amigos. We are the people, and the list will go on. We are Premier League, we are non-league. We are believers, we are odds defiers. We are giant killers, we are last-minute thrillers. We are FA Cup winners. We are part of your community, we are part of your family. We are part of your history. We are a part of your future. We are together. We are Wigan Athletic forever. And I think that does perfectly sum up who we are. We're going through a tough time at the moment, but the way that this town, community, club, everyone to a man has pulled together, we're going to be all right.
Yeah, and we'll see Sheffield Wednesday in League One next year.
So if there's nothing else for anyone to say, it's a good night from me.
Good night from us.
Good night.
Up the tick.